It's time for our high school sports report. Now, the temperatures may be cooling down, but the playoffs are certainly heating up in the AIA football brackets. Already well into the playoffs, here's some of the games that have happened and are set to happen this Friday night. Now, our 6A brackets, we got number 4 seed Pinnacle. They handled business against number 5 seed Queen Creek, beating them 24-14, sending them to the semifinals next week against number 1 seed Castile, who also won their game against number 8 Mountain Point 43-6. Now, number 6 Red Mountain defended their home turf against number 14 Mesa, beating them 49-10, smoking them. Red Mountain will play number 2 Highland next week in the semifinal game. In the 5A bracket, we got number 1 seed Notre Dame Prep put on a show against number 8 Marana, beating them 65-36. Notre Dame Prep will meet Cactus High School in the semifinal next week. Cactus is ranked 4. Number 3 Higley was able to squeak by number 6 Desert Edge, beating them 45-42 on a last-second field goal, which will put them in the semifinal game next week against number 2 ranked Desert Mountain. Now, our 4A bracket, we have number 13 Lake Havasu, who upset the number 5 seed Yuma Catholic 35-34. That locks them in for a semifinal spot next week against number 1 ALA Gilbert North. The other side of the bracket, semifinal game is already set with number 2 Snowflake facing off against number 6 Canyon del Oro. Now, those are our number brackets. Now, our open division brackets, it's our opening weekend to the playoffs, and it was dramatic. Number 1 Liberty again put a smackdown on number 8 Sandra Day, facing them again this season, winning 56-26. They will play a tough number 5 Saguaro team, who knocked off number 4 Hamilton last week 45-35. Number 3 Chandler showed no mercy against number 6 Centennial, beating them 47-27. They will face number 2 Basha next week in the semifinal match. Definitely looking forward to some of these games coming up this Friday to see who will advance, who's going to be headed home for this season. I'm Sheldon, and this is your AIA Report.
Up on what's going on in the world around us. And as always, we leave all the opinion making to you. We're just here to share the facts. So, let's see what's going on in the Haps with the Maps. In an uplifting story for Europe, according to news sources, the European Union Crime Agency has taken down what they consider to be a super cartel of drug traffickers who were apparently responsible for about 1/3 of Europe's total cocaine trade. 1/3 of Europe's total cocaine trade. A series of raids were conducted across Europe and even the United Arab Emirates throughout November, and they seized, get this, over 30 tons of drugs. Wow! That's give or take about 60,000 pounds. What a seizure. Hats off to these European crime fighters. Moving on to Italy. There have been calls to cease all new construction in Italy. This development came after a landslide unfortunately took the lives of 8 people. Now, in Italy, over 93% of municipalities are considered at risk of landslides and floods, and even land erosion because, of course, of the way it's set up. It's all surrounded by water. Now, this all, according to a report published by the Italian government's environmental agency, also known as ISPRA. These numbers were reported back in 2021. So perhaps we've had some movement since then, but most likely they're pretty close. Now in 2021, the findings indicated that over 1 million people were at risk of being affected by landslides, and over 6.5 million folks could be affected by flooding. What's the lesson here? Well, if you live in Italy or if you're planning to build there, definitely stay updated and keep aware of what your risks are. Let's all be aware of our surroundings so we're not caught off guard, right? Now, moving on to a story that we're all quite familiar with. The war in Ukraine is, of course, still going on. Now, as of late, Russian forces continue to shell residential buildings, and the targets are very sporadic, with no specific target in mind, it seems, just an effort to create additional casualties or movement in their side in this conflict, in this war. Now, Ukraine is bracing for another missile strike from Russia, and President Zelensky has warned the Ukrainian citizens to brace themselves. Some alarming numbers are coming in regarding children. It's been reported that 329 children are currently considered missing, while an additional 12,000 more have been deported to Russia. Now, we don't know if that is against the citizens' wishes, or if they wanted to go, or what the context was. We're just going off of what's being reported here from the sources. So, our prayers go out to everyone fighting, and hopefully there can be a peaceful resolution soon. And of course, we will keep you updated. Now, moving on, the big news in the Middle East is the World Cup. Yes, hosted in Qatar. Qatar was selected back in 2010 as the host of the 2022 World Cup matches. Of course, not without controversy. Football, that's what it is called throughout the majority of the world. Much like so many things in the Middle East, there was believed to be corruption in the bidding process. Now, it is the first Middle Eastern country to host the World Cup, and it was no small feat to accomplish building the best stadiums to host these games. It's estimated around $220 to $300 billion was spent on the infrastructure, as Qatar built several new stadiums and renovated others. And that is also stricken with controversy after the death of migrants who built the stadium. Now, despite any negativity, the world is definitely watching, as it was reported that an estimated 3.5 billion people watched the World Cup in 2018. Those numbers, we have no doubt, will go up from there for this year. The World Cup is unlike any other sport aired on TV, brings all the humans together. You might remember, I think for many of us here in America, some of the more televised and celebrated events, such as when Ricky Martin did the ole, 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 go, 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 ole, ole, you know what I mean? That was one of the most memorable World Cup moments for Americans. Soccer, or football as the world calls it, has not always caught on heavily here in the States. It is now getting more and more popular. We've certainly enjoyed watching. I've personally been in London for one of the Euro tournaments going on in FIFA, and let me tell you, Europe is a huge party when it comes to the World Cup. So now, moving on to Pakistan. Taliban militants are no longer abiding by a ceasefire with the Pakistani government. Now, the TTP, or the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, is a militant group who wants to overthrow the Pakistani government in order to assert their rule. Now, don't get this confused with the Afghan Taliban, because according to reports, they are not directly affiliated. However, they do pledge allegiance to them, allegedly. Now, speaking of the Taliban, let's move over to Afghanistan. Now, since the United States withdrew its troops and the Taliban took over, Afghanistan has seen the extreme Islamic group take over. Rules against women include not allowing women to go to the gym. Middle-aged schoolgirls still cannot go to school. They're not allowed to go to work or leave their house without a close male relative. Women are also banned from using makeup and nail polish, and they wear what's called a chardi, which is a head-to-toe veil. And as for the men, they are not allowed to shape or trim their beards, and they must wear their white caps or turbans. Now, the men as well, are not to approach the women unless introduced by a male relative. So, very, very different way of living in that region. And for us Americans, when we are listening to these stories, I know for me personally, having grown up here in the States, it can be very difficult to understand. So, we will continue to bring you more stories to try and gain a further understanding. And now moving on to China. The number of cases of COVID has reached a record high, promoting citywide lockdowns. Protests all over China included 16 cities where citizens are either confronting the police, tearing down barricades, or holding white pieces of paper or their flashlight on their cell phones, opposing the government's strict COVID policies, along with censorship and the desire for a democracy with a new leader. Now, the Chinese government has been cracking down, and we will report, of course, as more developments happen. It just really makes you appreciate, the freedoms that we have here, civil liberty, or, just the ability to get up and do what we love. So grateful. And so we will definitely keep you updated there. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the people of China just trying to live. Moving on, the Democratic Republic of Congo will be holding their presidential and parliamentary elections. And we do have challenges here in the US, of course, but nothing compared to the challenges in the Congo, guys. They face the logistics of transporting ballot materials thousands of miles. All while dealing with a current Ebola and COVID-19 outbreak, which has also caused many to leave their homes, understandably. Now, here's why this election is so significant. The last time they held elections in the Congo, it was delayed by about 2 years. So let's see how this one turns out. Campaigning has already begun, and we will certainly keep you posted. Now, staying on the continent of Africa, but moving on to Nigeria. Now, in Nigeria, there is a startup called HYFNTV, and they are using the power of technology to help the visually impaired. Now, did you know over 15%, that's 1-5, over 15% of the world's blind population lives in Africa? I didn't know that. Now, products from HYFNTV are there to aid those in need. One product includes smart reading glasses, which are actually able to convert the text to audio. So that's pretty cool right there. That seems like really useful technology to assist folks who cannot see from their eyes to still get whatever material they want, to still be able to gain all the knowledge and experience the world. We're all humans. We all get that full experience. That's a birthright. But now moving on. In Uganda, the government is still battling the Ebola outbreak and has quarantined the epicenter, adding an additional 21 days to the already 21 days of quarantine time. Now, Mubende and Kasanda are districts in central Uganda, which are going to be restricted through mid-December in order to mitigate viruses from spreading throughout the rest of the country. Now, since September, there have been 55 deaths and 141 recorded infections. Now, just like the flu and COVID, there are different strains, and this one is said to be the one that's unable to be cured by the vaccination. So, best of luck to all of those over there, fighting this terrible disease. We send our thoughts and our prayers and our well wishes and our highest vibes for your healing. Now let's head over to Australia to see what's going on. Now, news reports state that Australia will once again lobby to make sure that the Great Barrier Reef is not listed as endangered by UNESCO. According to the current government, they believe they have been doing and are doing enough to protect the beautiful reef and claim all reefs throughout the world suffer the same potential danger as the Great Barrier Reef due to rising sea temperatures. So that said, Australia's government also believes they are doing their part to make sure the temperature does not go above that 1.5 Celsius threshold. So according to reports, UNESCO gives the endangered label if they'd like to see a government invest or take more action toward the specific location. Now at this point, Australia is arguing that it is not necessary. If you haven't checked out the Great Barrier Reef, definitely check that out, maybe on YouTube or some Google pictures or whatnot. It is gorgeous. Now, let's take it back all the way, right back here to home, our beloved United States of America. So our U.S. lawmakers are taking steps to block potential railroad strikes. So we have been covering this situation with high alert, as a railroad strike could cripple the economy. Reportedly, this is the opinion of many politicians as well as many economists that we have read. So that said, it could freeze reportedly up to 30% of cargo shipments and cause inflation to rise, along with costing the economy about $2 billion per day, reportedly estimated. Now, it would no doubt interrupt daily life for many folks, as that is the way that so many items do get across the country and such. But we will be able to tell soon what the effects will be, as they have until December 9th to resolve any issues. Otherwise, workers could strike, or potentially worse, even the railroads could lock out their employees. Now, President Biden has asked Congress, as of Monday night, in a letter, to pass legislation preventing a strike. We will make sure that we keep you apprised of the situation and the developments as they happen. Now, in Hawaii, volcano Mauna Loa erupted on Sunday for the first time since 1984. Wow, I was not even born yet. It was the following year. Now, the volcano spewed hot lava near midnight. However, nothing to be concerned about so far, as all of the lava is contained within the summit and is believed to not be a threat to any Hawaiians living downslope. That's majorly great to hear. Great to hear that folks are safe, and to end that right here in the United States. Thank you very much, folks, for tuning in today. With that concludes our trip around the world. For HYFNTV Network, I'm Jai. We'll catch you next time.
What is up, everybody? Now it's time for our power rankings. We're going to go through our high school rankings, then our pro rankings. Starting with our CAA boys basketball. At the 5 spot, Basis Peoria, 1-0. Number 4, Maryville Prep Academy, 1-0. Number 3, El Dorado, 1-0. Number 2, ASU Preparatory Academy, 1-0. Number 1, Heritage Academy Maricopa, and you guessed it, 1-0. And the girls varsity, At the 5 spot, Basis Prescott, 0-1. Number 4, we got Phoenix College Prep, 0-1. Number 3, Glenview College Prep, 1-1. Number 2, Maryville Prep Academy, 1-0. And at the 1 spot, West Phoenix High School, they're also 1-0. Now, rankings for the AIA basketball have not yet been released for Max Prep, so make sure to stay tuned week by week for when they do get released. Now, for our national rankings, they will also be getting released in just a week for basketball, soccer, and several other sports, so stay tuned for that. Now it's time for our pro rankings. And guys, you see many lists for power rankings on the pros from ESPN, CBS, NFL.com, and so many others creating their own power rankings. Well, I have my own list for the NFL. So guys, here's my top 10 list for the NFL going into week 13. Number 10, we got the Titans, led by Derrick Henry. They got a bad offense, a bad quarterback, but they do have a great running back, best in the league, and a 7-4 record. Number 9, the New York Jets. Great defense, probably a top 5 defense actually. They're 7-4. Number 8, the San Francisco 49ers. Say what you want about Jimmy Garoppolo, but he's got weapons around him, a great defense, and a 7-4 record, leading that NFC West. Number 7, Cincinnati Bengals, 7-4. Rough start to the season, but they found their footing and they're dangerous. Number 6, the Minnesota Vikings, 9-2. You may think it's a little low, but I think Kirk Cousins is a little questionable. The defense is questionable, but they're 9-2. Say what you want. Number 5, Miami Dolphins, 8-3. I believe if Tua Tagovailoa never got hurt, they'd be undefeated. They're fantastic offense, pretty good defense, great coaching by Mike Daniels. Number 4, the Buffalo Bills, 8-3. A little shaky the last 2 weeks, but the Buffalo Bills, led by Josh Allen, are a great team. They're going to make the playoffs. Number 3, the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott's playing pretty good this year. Zeke's playing pretty good this year. The offense, a little shaky at times, but that defense is good enough to win games. They're 8-3. Number 2, we got the Philadelphia Eagles, who are 10-1. One of the easiest schedules this year, but they're 10-1. You got to respect the record. And at number 1, the Kansas City Chiefs, sitting at 9-2. They're fantastic. And just like the NFL, I have my own NBA list as well. Number 10, the Philadelphia 76ers. They're 12-9. A little shaky with James Harden being out, but Joel Embiid has been playing like an MVP this year, and they're a dangerous team to watch out for. Number 9, the LA Clippers, playing many games without Kawhi Leonard. Paul George leading the way. They're 12-9. Number 8, the Indiana Pacers, 11-8. Tyrese Halliburton has been playing on another level this year, leading the league in assists. Number 7, the Memphis Grizzlies, 12-8. Number 6, New Orleans Pelicans, 12-8, led by Zion Williamson, who's playing this year, back from injury. He's an MVP candidate, I think, or at least Player of the Year, or Comeback Player of the Year. Number 5, the Cleveland Cavaliers, led by Donovan Mitchell. They're 13-8. Number 4, the Denver Nuggets, led by the King, the Joker, I should say, back-to-back MVP, Nikola Jokic. Number 3, the Phoenix Suns, 13-6, playing many games without Chris Paul. And when he does play, not scoring a whole lot, but the 13-6 role players showing up big. Devin Booker playing like an MVP. Number 2, the Milwaukee Bucks, 14-5. All of this without Chris Middleton, but Giannis is playing out of this world this year. And at the 1 spot, Boston Celtics, they're 17-4. Jason Tatum is putting up MVP numbers. They got a great team. They basically have every piece except for a great head coach right now. And guys, that is going to do it for our power rankings here on the Varsity Squad. Now we present updated rankings of all your favorite sports week by week. So make sure to tune in next week to see how these lists change. I'm Sheldon, and this is your...
It is beautiful weather out there, Arizona, so let's take a look at the weather coming up this weekend and the beginning of next week. Starting off for today, it looks like we're going to have a high of 72 degrees with some clouds, and it's going to stay around that temperature really throughout the week, around the low 70s to high 60s for the highs. We are going to have a lot of overcast days, so if you're like me, you're going to love it. It's not going to come with the chance of meatballs unless you ordered that on the side. But getting back to our weather, it looks like the lows are also going to be in those upper 40s and lower 50s. Very chilly outside, but beautiful. No rain in sight with those clouds. So enjoy the weather. Now let's take a moment and get over to Sheldon, who has the latest in Arizona sports news for us.
Yes, certainly loving that weather. Great to be outside in Arizona. We're going to start with our Suns, our good team, one of the only good teams in Arizona right now. DeAndre Ayton, Player of the Week. Let's get over to the big man, DeAndre Ayton, who was announced as the Western Conference Player of the Week. Even better, it's his first time accepting this award. In the last few games actually, he's averaged 23 points on 67% shooting, grabbing 16 rebounds a game and 1.3 blocks. And they're 3-0 in the last 3 games. Now check out this quote from the big man and how he sees it. "I'm the main guy who has to be ready for the play every night. I cannot be that guy who is easing into games. For this team, I have to be the energizer. That dude who is making those plays, who is on the glass, who is dunking the ball, who is getting the crowd in it, setting all our screens, setting the tone of the physicality, moving people out of the way." And that's it. That's what he said. Great quote from the big man. Well, you sure handled your business and nailed it. Great job and good luck to the Suns on their next game against the Chicago Bulls. The Suns are currently number 1 in the Western Conference, Western Division, with a 14-6 record. Now for our Cardinals, sadly, it's not the same story as the Suns in terms of greatness. And what a tough game it was against the Chargers. Definitely a nail-biter at the end, but unfortunately, the Cardinals could not prevail, losing 24-25 against the San Diego Chargers in literally the last couple minutes of the game. It's been a tough season for the Cards. They started the season with high hopes for postseason play. However, due to injuries, missing a certain suspended player for 7 games, and just poor performances and or miscommunication, they missed their shot at being a Super Bowl host with the team in the final game. No worries, because if you're a diehard fans, we know there's always next season. Let's say the season ended today. The Cardinals would have the number 7 draft pick, and hey, that's not too shabby. Give the trade-off. But it isn't the end of the season, so we will see how it all turns out for our beloved football team. The Cardinals have a bye week this week. That should give them plenty of time to straighten out things. Hopefully some players that are injured can come back from injury as they host the Patriots next week at home. Now moving on to some college and high school football news. ASU coach looks to keep talent at home. Our new ASU coach, Kenny Dillingham, is on a mission to keep talented athletes in Arizona to play for our state universities, at least at ASU at least. Coach Dillingham has reached out to numerous high school coaches and held a Zoom meeting to inform these ASU coaches that they will be dedicating the first 2 weeks of their recruiting season to athletes right here in the Valley. That's right. Head coaches from high schools like Chaparral and Higley have already agreed to this approach, and the prospect of ASU's coaches has come out to view athletes at our local high schools is giving a glimpse of hope to more and more athletes. ASU coach Dillingham is focused on building relationships within the football community starting at the high school level, and it'll be interesting to see how and where these things go. As always, we will keep you updated with all the latest info, and that's all we got for today. What is up, everybody? Now it's time for our power rankings. We're going to go through our high school rankings, then our pro rankings. Starting with our CAA boys basketball. At the 5 spot, Basis Peoria, 1-0. Number 4, Maryville Prep Academy, 1-0. Number 3, El Dorado, 1-0. Number 2, ASU Preparatory Academy, 1-0. Number 1, Heritage Academy Maricopa, and you guessed it, 1-0. And the girls varsity, at the 5 spot, Basis Prescott, 0-1. Number 4, we got Phoenix College Prep, 0-1. Number 3, Glenview College Prep, 1-1. Number 2, Maryville Prep Academy, 1-0. And at the 1 spot, West Phoenix High School, they're also 1-0. Now rankings for the AIA basketball have not yet been released for Max Prep, so make sure to stay tuned week by week for when they do get released. Now for our national rankings, they will also be getting released in just a week for basketball, soccer, and several other sports, so stay tuned for that. Now it's time for our pro rankings. And guys, you see many lists for power rankings on the pros from ESPN, CBS, NFL.com, and so many others creating their own power rankings. Well, I have my own list for the NFL. So guys, here's my top 10 list for the NFL going into week 13. Number 10, we got the Titans, led by Derrick Henry. They got a bad offense, a bad quarterback, but they do have a great running back, best in the league, and a 7-4 record. Number 9, the New York Jets. Great defense, probably a top 5 defense actually. They're 7-4. Number 8, the San Francisco 49ers. Say what you want about Jimmy Garoppolo, but he's got weapons around him, a great defense, and a 7-4 record, leading that NFC West. Number 7, Cincinnati Bengals, 7-4. Rough start to the season, but they found their footing and they're dangerous. Number 6, the Minnesota Vikings, 9-2. You may think it's a little low, but I think Kirk Cousins is a little questionable. The defense is questionable, but they're 9-2. Say what you want. Number 5, Miami Dolphins, 8-3. I believe if Tua Tagovailoa never got hurt, they'd be undefeated. They're fantastic offense, pretty good defense, great coaching by Mike Daniels. Number 4, the Buffalo Bills, 8-3. A little shaky the last 2 weeks, but the Buffalo Bills, led by Josh Allen, are a great team. They're going to make the playoffs. Number 3, the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott's playing pretty good this year. Zeke's playing pretty good this year. The offense, a little shaky at times, but that defense is good enough to win games. They're 8-3. Number 2, we got the Philadelphia Eagles, who are 10-1. One of the easiest schedules this year, but they're 10-1. You got to respect the record. And at number 1, the Kansas City Chiefs, sitting at 9-2. They're fantastic. And just like the NFL, I have my own NBA list as well. Number 10, the Philadelphia 76ers. They're 12-9. A little shaky with James Harden being out, but Joel Embiid has been playing like an MVP this year, and they're a dangerous team to watch out for. Number 9, the LA Clippers, playing many games without Kawhi Leonard. Paul George leading the way. They're 12-9. Number 8, the Indiana Pacers, 11-8. Tyrese Halliburton has been playing on another level this year, leading the league in assists. Number 7, the Memphis Grizzlies, 12-8. Number 6, New Orleans Pelicans, 12-8, led by Zion Williamson, who's playing this year, back from injury. He's an MVP candidate, I think, or at least Player of the Year, or Comeback Player of the Year. Number 5, the Cleveland Cavaliers, led by Donovan Mitchell. They're 13-8. Number 4, the Denver Nuggets, led by the King, the Joker, I should say, back-to-back MVP, Nikola Jokic. Number 3, the Phoenix Suns, 13-6, playing many games without Chris Paul. And when he does play, not scoring a whole lot, but the 13-6 role players showing up big. Devin Booker playing like an MVP. Number 2, the Milwaukee Bucks, 14-5. All of this without Chris Middleton, but Giannis is playing out of this world this year. And at the one spot, Boston Celtics, they're 17-4. Jason Tatum is putting up MVP numbers. They got a great team. They basically have every piece except for a great head coach right now. And guys, that is going to do it for our power rankings here on the Varsity Squad. Now we present updated rankings of all your favorite sports week by week, so make sure to tune in next week to see how these lists change. I'm Sheldon, and this is your power rankings on HYFNTV.com.
Thank you for joining us here today on the update. As we go around the world, we are going to stop by China and break down what is happening right now with the COVID lockdowns. The way their government is handling COVID and the people's rejections of the new lockdowns have citizens fighting back. Around the world, COVID had shut down many economies, including here in the U.S., and while many around the world wore masks and some had mandatory closures, in China they have taken a zero tolerance or dynamic zero approach to COVID. So what does that mean exactly? According to a report by Reuters, China says it recognizes domestic outbreaks are inevitable, and its policies are not geared towards having zero cases at all times, but instead are about dynamically taking action when cases surface. Now what they've decided the best route is a two-part mission, first prevention and then containment. In hopes of limiting the spread of the virus, regular PCR tests are given, which are similar to those that we've been taking here in the U.S. to help diagnose the virus. And if a potential suspected or confirmed test comes back positive for COVID, the person is ordered to isolate at home or is put into a government-supervised facility for quarantine. Any persons who have come in contact with the infected person are also required to quarantine in the same fashion. Now, this has resulted in China locking down entire buildings and even cities as a result of their policies. And how can they lock down entire buildings or cities? Well, each person has a COVID profile, for lack of better terms, in which test results are logged and tracked by their government. And get this, their movements are tracked by mobile phone signal locators. So, each person has access to their profile on their phone, and if they have a negative or normal COVID profile, they may be permitted to enter buildings, go to work, things like that. However, if it becomes abnormal, which it can do without notice, access to public areas, such as where one works or traveling on mass transit, becomes prohibited. What do we mean by an abnormal reading that can come out of nowhere? Let's say someone rode on a bus and someone else on that bus tested positive a day later. Well, the person who was in no way related but spent a few minutes with them in the same area will get notified on their phone by a change of color. That notifies them that their current status has changed. Again, the government is able to do this because they track the movements of the civilians by mobile locators on phones. Some citizens are being locked in buildings for months on end and are not able to get food or water due to losing their source of income from being locked away. Some may ask, why don't they just leave the building? The answer is an ominous one. It is because there are barricades set up outside of their doors with officers guarding them. The government is literally able to lock them in the buildings as there are electronic seals attached to the doors to enforce the closure. And it's not an outbreak that causes a building lockdown to be triggered. In fact, it can be just one single case causing many to be locked away for months at a time. Now, protests around multiple cities have broken out due to the strict measures, and videos have surfaced, to the dismay of the Chinese government, showing peaceful protesters holding pieces of white paper or having their flashlight on their phone, some saying it's the only way to show their discontent with China's government's censorship and harsh policies. There are also videos of protesters engaging the police and fighting physically back by pushing over barricades in front of their enclosed living quarters. There are also candlelit vigils taking place, some for less strict COVID restrictions, and those who want democracy to prevail, open access online, and some are even asking Xi Jinping to step down. Other events that have inflamed the growing fire: there was a bus carrying 27 people to a mandated quarantine area that crashed, killing all on board. Another reason, in a building that had been under strict lockdown for over 3 months, a fire broke out near the top floors and unfortunately 10 people lost their lives. So people are frustrated. They've had enough, are demonstrating that by the various protests. And these protests come at a great risk if arrested. Now, protests are not forbidden in China, and they do occur, just not on the same level as the ones occurring now. At least not since the protest in Tiananmen Square in May of 1989. That mass protest was fueled by the death of Hu Wanbang, who was a Chinese Communist Party, or the CCP's general secretary, who encouraged democratic reforms and because of this was forced to resign in 1987. Now, after his passing in 1989, thousands of students filled the Tiananmen Square demanding reform, and with crowds growing larger, the Chinese government dispatched the military to enforce martial law. Well, the group at Tiananmen Square, which reached around 1 million participants, did not stand down, and the military forcibly took back control, with hundreds dying and thousands being arrested. The Chinese government labeled them, the protesters at that time, as counter-revolutionaries. So that brings us back to the protests currently happening. Some areas have endured lengthy lockdowns, such as Shanghai, who saw a 2-month lockdown which left many without food, water, and medical care. And due to the recent increase in COVID numbers, which China just reported over a record 30,000 cases, a number that is high for China since the enactment of the dynamic zero approach, the lockdowns have been set to begin again. And this is what has led to the mass amounts of people protesting in China, at the risk of being sentenced to years in jail if arrested. Those participating are putting on a huge brave face to fight what they believe in. Will they grow in numbers such as those in 1989? Only time will tell, but a shift has started that definitely seems evident. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. So thank you for joining us today. We hope you learned a little bit about the world around you, and make sure you tune in again for more updates.
What's up, guys? It's Landon here. It's our mission here to shine a light on standout athletes that do great things. Today we bring a story to you of a freshman cross-country runner who just won't give up. Daniel Reese, a freshman at Westwood High School. Also a member of the cross-country team, has faced much adversity since the beginning of his running career, having to overcome some obstacles that the typical runner would not have to overcome. Daniel has battled ankle injuries all season, which has affected his time and pace at certain events. And if that wasn't bad enough, he is currently battling Osgood-Schindler disease, a disease that affects the knees and joints of a young child or adolescent that is still growing.
Daniel is only 14 years old, certainly is still growing, and dealing with this disease has been something he had just had to push through all season long. Daniel became a runner at 13 years old, joining a local club, and he decided to take his talents into high school, running his first mile of the season in just 6 minutes and 13 seconds. Just a week after, in a week full of ice packs and stretches to calm down his pain in his knees and ankles, Daniel was set to run a 5K meet. He ended up finishing last in the event, running an upsetting 34 minutes and 24 seconds. Through the next few days, Daniel would try out some alternative training styles, which included biking and some running on special turf. He was ready again to run in the next event. This time, running with a chip or two on his shoulder, running a time of 21 minutes and 16 seconds and finishing far from last. Now just a few weeks ago, at the AIA sectionals, Reese clocked a personal high of 19 minutes and 4 seconds at the 5K, shaving off nearly 15 minutes from his first race of the year. Daniel, who's only a freshman, will be spending the offseason trying to get back to full health and strength. And with him being the third on the team, he will be leaned on heavy next year on the pathway to getting to the state finals. His improvement, patience, and resilience have sure set a high standard for other incoming freshmen at Westwood High School. If you have an athlete you would like to highlight, shoot us an email at HYFNTV.com. That's HYFNTV.com. I'm Landon, and thanks for joining us.